Close your eyes for just a moment. Try to remember the very specific, earthy smell of a dark green mosquito coil burning on a humid evening, or the heavy, rhythmic clicking of wooden clogs against damp asphalt. These were not just random sensations. They were the very heartbeat of our youth in Japan during the 1960s and 70s. Today, we live in an era of unbelievable speed, bright screens, and instant gratification. But somewhere along the way, in our rush toward the future, we left behind a world of profound warmth, deeply rooted rituals, and everyday magic. In this video, we are going to journey back in time to rediscover 20 forgotten details from everyday life in Showa-era Japan that we have lost forever. We will walk down those dusty streets, open those heavy wooden doors, and breathe in the forgotten scents of our past. And I promise you, the very last memory we visit today will bring a tear to your eye and remind you of what it truly meant to be connected to the people you love. So, sit back, pour yourself a hot cup of tea, and let us remember together. Before we look at these precious memories, we must understand how differently time flowed back then. In the 1960s and 1970s, time was not something we constantly tried to beat or manipulate. It moved at the gentle pace of a bicycle wheel or the slow boiling of an iron kettle. We did not have cell phones buzzing in our pockets or constant notifications demanding our attention. Because of this, we understood the profound value of waiting. Waiting for a letter to arrive, waiting for a television show to air at a specific hour, waiting for the seasons to change so we could taste a certain fruit. We are often told that today, with all our modern technology, we are richer and more connected than ever before. But those of us who lived through the Showa era know the real truth. We may have had fewer material things, and life certainly required more physical labor, but emotionally, we were infinitely wealthier. Our interactions were face-to-face, our conversations were unhurried, and our communities relied on a beautiful, unspoken web of mutual dependence. We looked each other in the eyes, we recognized the sounds of our neighbors' footsteps, and we found genuine joy in the simplest, most mundane daily chores. We did not just exist in the same neighborhood, we truly lived together. Do you remember the gentle, rhythmic sound of the small brass bell echoing through the narrow, winding streets just as the late afternoon sun began to dip below the rooftops? It was the tofu seller, slowly pedaling his heavy bicycle or pushing his wooden cart through the neighborhood. The clear, crisp ring of that bell was our daily clock. When you heard it, you knew it was time to grab a bowl or a small pot from the kitchen and run outside. You would wait at the edge of the street, clutching a few cold coins in your hand. The air would be filled with the faint, comforting smell of soy and fresh water as he lifted the wooden lid of his deep, rectangular vat. Inside, resting in crystal-clear, icy water, were the perfect, snow-white blocks of fresh tofu. He would carefully scoop out a block with his specialized, flat metal spatula, his hands weathered but incredibly gentle, and place it directly into your waiting bowl. There was no plastic packaging, no barcodes, and no rush. He knew your mother, he knew your family, and he would always ask how your day at school went. That short daily exchange was a thread that wove the entire street together. We brought that fresh tofu back to the kitchen, and its soft, delicate taste became the foundation of our evening meal. Today, we simply grab a plastic container from a brightly lit supermarket refrigerator in complete silence. We have gained convenience, but we have forever lost that beautiful, personal evening melody. Let us turn our minds back to those lazy, dusty afternoons when the streets belonged entirely to the children. Long before every living room had a glowing television set, we had a different kind of magic that arrived on two wheels. The kamishibai man, the traveling storyteller, would ride into the neighborhood on his bicycle, parking near the local shrine or a vacant lot. He would strike two wooden clappers together, the sharp, dry crack echoing down the alleys, calling all of us to gather around. We would run as fast as our legs could carry us, gripping our precious 5 or 10 yen coins. If you bought his sugary, sticky candies, you earned the right to stand right in the very front row. On the back of his bicycle sat a small, intricately crafted wooden stage. As he slid the colourful, hand-painted cardboard pictures out one by one, he transformed into a master of voices. He was the brave samurai, the scary ghost, the weeping princess. We stood there, shoulder to shoulder, our eyes wide with wonder, completely captivated by the drama unfolding before us. We shared gasps of fear and bursts of laughter as a community of children. The smell of the sweet syrup, the texture of the rough paper tickets, and the booming voice of the storyteller created a vivid, shared imagination that no modern screen could ever replicate. He did not just sell candy or read a story. He delivered pure, collective joy right to our street corner. Close your eyes and try to recall the exact scent of a humid summer evening in the 1960s. Before the days of quietly humming air conditioners, the windows and sliding doors were left wide open to catch the faintest evening breeze. But with the breeze came the mosquitoes, and so the ritual of the Katori Senko began. Do you remember the deep, earthy, slightly spicy smoke of the green mosquito coil? The coil was often placed inside a ceramic pig, a kayari buta, with its round belly and wide open snout. The rough texture of the ceramic and the gentle glow of the burning ember in the gathering dusk are images burned deeply into our memories. Lighting the coil was a family ritual. The thin ribbon of blue smoke would slowly curl up towards the wooden ceiling, filling the tatami room with a fragrance that meant safety and summer relaxation. You would lie on the cool straw mats, listening to the chirping of the cicadas outside and the distant sound of wind chimes, wrapped in the protective, fragrant blanket of that smoke. It was a smell that meant your parents were looking out for you, ensuring your peaceful sleep in the sweltering heat. Now, we plug a plastic device into a wall socket without a second thought. It is odorless, invisible, and entirely soulless. We traded the sensory poetry of the glowing summer coil for sterile convenience, leaving behind a fragrance that once defined the very essence of the Japanese summer. Think back to the earliest hours of the morning when the sky was still a pale, inky blue and the world was completely silent. The only sound was the rapid, purposeful footsteps of the milk delivery man and the soft clinking of thick glass bottles. Nailed to the wooden pillar beside our front door was a small, sturdy wooden box, painted with the faded logo of the local dairy. This was the Gyunyu Bako. Every single morning, as if by magic, the empty bottles we left out the night before were replaced with full, ice-cold bottles of fresh milk. Do you remember the heavy, solid feel of that glass bottle in your small hands? The best part was peeling back the thick paper cap. Sometimes you had to use a special little needle with a plastic handle to pry it open without spilling a drop. The rich cream would gather at the very top, sticking to the underside of the paper lid. We would lick that thick cream off the paper first, a tiny private morning treat before breakfast. The wooden box itself smelled of damp pine and cold glass. It was a symbol of trust between the delivery man and our household. We never worried about anyone stealing from that box. It stood there at the entrance of our home, a humble wooden sentry delivering health and routine. Today, we buy milk in large, disposable paper cartons, completely missing the satisfying weight of the glass and the intimate, quiet morning connection with the unseen person who brought it to our door. Let us take a walk down memory lane to the neighborhood center, the public bathhouse, which was the beating heart of our community in the 1960s and 1970s. Not every home had the luxury of a private bath, but looking back, that was perhaps a hidden blessing. Going to the center was a daily evening event, an outing with your father or mother. You would walk through the streets, clutching a small plastic basin filled with soap, a thin cotton towel, and a bottle of shampoo. Do you remember sliding open the heavy glass doors and being hit by that warm, incredibly humid air, smelling of alkaline soap and damp wood? You would take off your shoes and put them in the wooden lockers with those large, wooden numbered keys. Inside the bathing area, the echoing sounds of splashing water, echoing conversations, and the scraping of wooden stools against the tiled floor created a lively symphony. High above the deep, hot baths was the magnificent painted mural of Mount Fuji, looking down on the neighborhood as we washed away the dirt and fatigue of the day. There were no barriers of class or status in the Sento. Everyone was equal in the steaming water. Neighbors discussed local news, children played, and the elderly found companionship. And nothing in the world tasted quite like the painfully cold bottle of sweet fruit milk or coffee milk, gulped down right after stepping out of the hot water. We did not just go there to clean our bodies, we went there to cleanse our souls together. At the very center of family life in the Showa era was a simple, low, round wooden table called the chabudai. Do you remember the smooth, worn surface of its wooden top? It was heavy, sturdy, and entirely practical. In an era when our homes were small and every square inch of tatami mattered, the chabudai was a marvel of daily transformation. Its forelegs could be folded away underneath, allowing us to sweep the room or lay out the futons for sleeping. But when it was set up, it was the undeniable anchor of the household. The entire family would sit around it on thin cushions, our knees nearly touching. Because it was round, there was no head of the table, and everyone was drawn intimately close. The smell of steamed rice, miso soup, and grilled fish would rise from the center, warming our faces. We ate our meals there, children did their homework there, and parents drank hot green tea there while watching the bulky black and white television in the corner. The chabudai was not just a piece of furniture, it was the silent witness to every family discussion, every laugh, every scolding, and every shared silence. It forced us to face one another, to look into each other's eyes, and to share our space in a way that modern Western-style dining tables simply do not require. When we abandoned sitting on the floor around that humble round table, we perhaps lost a small but vital measure of our family closeness. Let us remember the commanding presence of the kuro denwa, the heavy, black rotary dial telephone. It was not something you carried in your pocket. It was an important stationary fixture in the hallway or the living room, often resting on its own special doily, and sometimes even covered with a delicate, handmade lace cover to keep the dust off. Do you remember the substantial weight of the handset? It felt cold and serious against your ear. Making a call was a deliberate, almost ceremonial act. You had to insert your finger into the numbered holes of the dial, pull it all the way around to the metal stopper, and let it spin back with a rhythmic, mechanical whirring sound. If you made a mistake on the very last digit, you had to hang up and start all over again. Because it was in the middle of the house, there was no such thing as a private conversation. Your parents could hear every word, every sigh, and every giggle. Waiting for a call from a loved one meant sitting near that black machine, watching it, willing it to ring. And when it did ring, the loud, startling double bell sound echoed through the entire house, bringing a rush of adrenaline. You never knew who was on the other end until you picked it up and said hello. Today, we are constantly connected through glowing rectangles, but we have lost the anticipation, the physical weight, and the beautiful, deliberate patience required by that grand black telephone. Think back to the sheer physical effort and the soapy smells of laundry day in the 1960s. Long before the quiet, fully automatic washing machines of today, we had the twin tub washing machines. and before that, the ones with a hand-cranked rubber wringer on top. Do you remember the strong, distinct smell of powdered detergent foaming up in the swirling water? Washing clothes was a highly interactive chore. You had to stand there watching the water churn and then reach your wet, soapy hands into the cold water to pull out the heavy, dripping garments. If you had the wringer model, you had to carefully feed the edge of a wet shirt or a heavy pair of trousers between the two hard rubber rollers. You turned the metal crank handle with one hand while guiding the fabric with the other, watching the grey water squeeze out and fall back into the tub. It was a delicate dance to ensure buttons were not crushed and fingers were not pinched. It took time, it took muscle, and it required your complete attention. The sound of the motor grinding and the rhythmic slosh of the water were the soundtrack of a hard-working mother's morning. We hung the clothes outside on bamboo poles, smelling the fresh air and the faint, lingering scent of soap. The modern machine does everything with the push of a single button while we sleep, but it lacks the tactile, grounding connection to the caring labor that once kept our families clean and presentable. Let us recall the everyday magic of the furoshiki, the traditional square wrapping cloth. Before the era of endless plastic bags and disposable paper totes, this simple piece of fabric was an indispensable tool in every Japanese household. Do you remember the slightly stiff texture of a cotton furoshiki, often dyed in deep indigo with beautiful white geometric patterns or family crests? It was a marvel of versatility. Your mother could take a flat piece of cloth and, with a few deft folds and tight knots, transform it into a secure carrier for almost anything. We used it to carry our bento boxes to school, tying it neatly so the rice would not spill. We used it to wrap gifts for neighbors, carefully selecting a silk furoshiki with seasonal flowers to show respect and care. When the errand was done, the bag did not become trash. It simply unfolded, flattened out, and was neatly tucked away in a drawer or a pocket, ready to be used again for years to come. The act of tying those knots was an art form, a physical expression of protecting what was inside. Untying a gift wrapped in a furoshiki felt deeply personal, like unraveling a secret meant just for you. Today, we carry our belongings in branded, synthetic bags that have no soul and carry no history. We discarded the elegant, sustainable, and deeply mindful practice of wrapping our lives in beautiful fabric, losing a daily touch of grace and resourcefulness. Close your eyes and listen closely to the memories of your childhood streets. Can you hear the distinct, rhythmic clicking sound echoing against the wooden fences? It was the sound of geta, the traditional wooden clogs striking the earth. Karan koron, karan, koron. In the 1960s and early 1970s, especially in the summer evenings during local festivals or simply walking to the bathhouse, the streets were alive with this wooden percussion. Do you remember the feeling of slipping your bare feet into the thongs of the geta? The smooth wood felt cool against the soles of your feet. Walking in them required a specific posture, a slight shuffle, a mindful balance that grounded you to the earth. When you ran, the clicking became a rapid, chaotic clatter. Every person had their own unique rhythm, their own sonic footprint. A mother could recognize the exact sound of her child's geta returning home in the dark. In the rain, the wooden teeth of the clogs lifted us above the mud, and the sound changed to a duller, wet thud against the damp asphalt. Now, our streets are silenced by thick, synthetic rubber soles. We glide silently like ghosts through our neighborhoods, leaving no acoustic trace of our presence. The karan koron of the geta was more than just footwear. It was the comforting heartbeat of a community moving together, announcing our presence to the world with every single step we took. Let us step into a freezing classroom or a cold waiting room in the middle of a Showa-era winter. Central heating was a distant dream, and our salvation came in the form of the cast iron Daruma stove, sitting heavily in the center of the room. Do you remember its round, bulging shape, painted black, looking just like a traditional daruma doll? The teacher, or a designated student, would shovel black, dusty coal into its belly. The metallic clank of the iron door closing and the sudden, roaring draft of the fire instantly drew everyone near. We would huddle around it, holding our frozen, red hands out toward the radiating heat. But the true magic of the daruma stove was not just the warmth, it was the smell. On special days, someone would bring a few raw, sweet potatoes, wrap them in slightly damp newspaper, and place them carefully on the flat top or right in the hot ashes. The smell of the roasting yaki-imo would slowly fill the room, a rich, sweet, caramelizing aroma that made our mouths water and distracted us from our studies. When the potato was finally soft and slightly charred on the outside, we would break it open, the golden, steaming flesh burning our fingers as we ate it in pure bliss. The stove was a gathering place, a source of comfort, and a provider of the most delicious winter treats. Today, hidden vents blow warm, dry air from the ceiling, but we have lost the mesmerizing glow of the fire and the communal joy of huddling together against the bitter cold. Think back to the final, frantic days of December as the entire neighborhood prepared to welcome the new year. The crisp winter air would suddenly be shattered by a powerful, rhythmic thumping sound. It was the mochitsuki, the traditional pounding of rice to make mochi. Do you remember the massive, heavy wooden mortar, the yusu, sitting in the courtyard or the street, steaming with freshly cooked glutinous rice? This was never a solitary task. It required the strength, coordination, and trust of the entire community. One person would wield the heavy wooden mallet, bringing it down with a loud grunt and a sharp crack. Between each strike, another person, usually a grandmother or an experienced mother with incredibly quick hands, would dart in to turn and wet the sticky dough, risking her fingers with every beat. The smell of the sweet, steaming rice and burning wood was intoxicating. We children would stand on the sidelines, cheering them on, waiting for our turn to hold a smaller mallet. When the mochi was finally smooth and dangerously hot, we would all gather around tables covered in white powder to tear it into small pieces, rolling it into perfectly round shapes. We ate it right there, dipped in sweet soy sauce or covered in sweet bean paste. The mochitsuki was a physical manifestation of neighborhood unity. We literally pounded our shared hopes for the new year into that rice. A messy, beautiful, exhausting tradition, replaced today by sterile plastic packets bought from a store. Let us paint a picture of a suddenly vibrant street corner in the 1960s. Out of nowhere, breaking the quiet routine of a weekday afternoon, would come a burst of loud, cheerful, and slightly chaotic music. It was the Chindonya, the traditional street advertising troops. Do you remember the shock of color they brought to the grey streets? They wore flamboyant, exaggerated traditional kimono, bright makeup, and sometimes funny wigs. One would beat a large bass drum on their back. Another would play a mournful yet lively tune on a clarinet or saxophone, and the leader would strike the small gong and drum contraption attached to their chest. Chin, ton, shan. The sound was impossible to ignore. They were hired to announce the grand opening of a new pachinko parlor, a local butcher shop, or a big sale at the department store. We children would drop whatever we were playing and run to follow them, acting like a makeshift parade trailing behind the musicians. They would hand out colorful paper flyers, bowing and smiling, turning a mundane commercial advertisement into a theatrical festival. The Chindonya brought live music, laughter, and a sense of carnival directly to our doorsteps. Today, advertisements flash at us silently from screens, aggressive and easily ignored. But the Chindonya commanded our attention with joy and artistry, leaving a lingering, festive energy in the air long after their music faded down the alleyway. Think back to the kitchen before the tall, humming electric refrigerators became a standard fixture in every home. We had the koribako, The wooden icebox. Do you remember the solid, heavy wooden cabinet, often lined with zinc or tin, sitting quietly in the coolest corner of the house? It did not hum, it simply waited. To keep our food from spoiling, we relied on the ice delivery man. We would eagerly listen for his truck or his cart making its way down the street in the sweltering heat of July. He carried massive, crystal-clear blocks of solid ice, gripping them with wicked-looking iron tongs. He would haul the heavy block into our kitchen and place it securely in the top compartment of the icebox. As the ice slowly melted over the next few days, the heavy, cold air would sink down to chill the vegetables, the fish, and maybe a precious bottle of cider. There was a drip pan underneath that had to be emptied daily, a chore we children were often assigned. We would sometimes chip off a tiny shard of the ice, letting the pure, freezing water melt on our tongues like a rare delicacy. The icebox required constant attention and management. You could not just buy a week's worth of groceries and forget about them. It taught us to be mindful of our food, to eat what was fresh, and to respect the delicate balance of preserving it. The electric refrigerator gave us limitless storage, but it took away the beautiful, melting, daily rhythm of the wooden icebox. Let us walk once more through the sliding glass doors of the neighborhood Dagashiya, the cheap candy store that was the center of our childhood universe. Do you remember the overwhelming sweet smell of sugar, soy sauce, and cheap bubblegum that hit you the moment you walked in? The store was always dimly lit, run by an elderly grandmother or grandfather who sat behind the counter, seemingly ancient and endlessly patient. The shelves were crammed with large, clear glass jars, tilted at an angle, filled with colorful, sugary treasures. For just 5 or 10 yen, you could buy a stick of dried squid, a chemically bright powdered juice mix, or a small, round bubblegum that might contain a winning ticket for another free piece. We would spend hours agonizing over how to spend our tiny allowance, calculating the maximum amount of sugar we could get for our coins. The Dagashiya was not just a store, it was our first classroom in economics, our private social club, and our sanctuary away from the eyes of strict parents and teachers. We sat on the dusty wooden bench outside, trading baseball cards, blowing bubbles, and sharing our meager spoils. Today, children buy expensive, perfectly packaged snacks from brightly lit, impersonal convenience stores, but they will never know the thrill of discovering a winning ticket in a dusty Dagashiya, or the warm, wrinkled smile of the store owner who watched an entire generation of neighborhood children grow up. Close your eyes and recall the soft, diffused light filtering through the shoji, the traditional paper sliding doors, on a quiet Sunday morning. Before heavy curtains and glass windows dominated our living spaces, shoji paper was the fragile boundary between the inside of our homes and the harshness of the outside world. Do you remember the delicate texture of the washi paper, smooth on one side and slightly fibrous on the other? Because it was just paper, it required utmost respect. We were taught from a young age never to poke our fingers through it, though the temptation was sometimes too great. The most vivid memory is the annual ritual of repapering the doors at the very end of the year, just before New Year's Day. The whole family would participate. We would carefully peel off the yellowed, old paper, washing the intricate wooden lattice frames. Then came the smell of the rice paste, a sweet, starchy aroma as we carefully brushed it onto the wood. Rolling out the pristine, snow-white paper and pulling it tight without tearing it was an act of intense concentration. When it dried, it was tight like a drum, and the room instantly felt brighter, cleaner, and renewed. We lived in homes that breathed, homes that required our gentle touch and annual renewal. We traded the delicate, glowing beauty of paper for the sturdy permanence of glass and steel, losing the annual family ritual of lovingly repairing the very walls that sheltered us. Think back to the time when drawing a bath was a fiery, elemental chore, long before you could simply turn a faucet to get endless hot water. In rural areas or older neighborhoods, we had the goemon burol, the traditional iron cauldron bath heated by a real wood fire. Do you remember the smoky, woody scent that would drift over the rooftops in the late afternoon as every household began to prepare for the evening bath? It was usually the job of the father or the older children to chop the wood and build the fire in the furnace beneath the cast iron tub. You had to tend the flames carefully, listening to the crackle and pop of the burning pine, ensuring the water became painfully hot but not boiling. Taking a bath in a goemon buro was an adventure. Because the iron bottom was directly over the fire and burning hot to the touch, you had to step onto a round, floating wooden board, pressing it down to the bottom with your weight before you could sit. The water, heated by real fire, felt completely different. It possessed a deep, penetrating warmth that seemed to reach your very bones and linger long into the cold night. The smell of the smoke stuck to your hair and your clothes, a comforting, earthly perfume. We traded the roaring flames and the heavy iron for the push-button convenience of modern gas heaters, leaving behind a profound daily connection to the elements of fire, wood, and water. Let us remember the sleepy, humid mornings of our elementary school summer vacations. At exactly 6:30 in the morning, the crackling sound of a portable radio would echo across the local park or the schoolyard. It was time for Ragio Taiso, the daily radio gymnastics. Do you remember dragging your feet through the early morning dew, a thick paper attendance card hanging from your neck by a string? Children from all over the neighborhood would line up, rubbing the sleep from their eyes. When the lively, bouncing piano music began to play from the radio broadcast, we all began to stretch, bend, and jump in perfect synchronized unison. We did not do it because we loved exercise. We did it for the stamp. After the routine was over, the older children or the neighborhood association leader would press a red ink stamp onto our cards. Filling that card with stamps by the end of August was a matter of intense pride, and it often earned us a small notebook or some pencils as a reward. The music, the smell of the damp earth, and the collective stretching created a powerful rhythm for our summer days. It forced us out of bed and brought the community together in the gentle morning light. Today, children sleep in, staring at screens in air-conditioned rooms. The collective ritual of starting the day by breathing the fresh morning air together, united by the sound of a crackling radio broadcast, is a faded memory of a healthier, more disciplined time. Close your eyes and listen to the cold, biting wind of a winter night in the 1970s. In the deep silence, you would hear a sound that was both startling and incredibly comforting. Kachi, kachi, the sharp, piercing strike of two hard wooden blocks hitting together. It was the local night watchman on his patrol. As he walked slowly down the dark, freezing streets, his deep, resonant voice would ring out, calling, "Hi no yojin, watch out for fire." Do you remember pulling your heavy futon up to your chin, feeling absolutely safe as that sound passed by your window and slowly faded away into the distance? In an era when many houses were still made of wood and paper, and we used open flame heaters, fire was a terrifying, constant threat. The men of the neighborhood association took turns walking the streets in the dead of winter, bundled in thick coats, sacrificing their sleep to keep everyone else safe. The sound of their wooden clappers was a solemn reminder to check the stove and put out cigarettes, but it was also a lullaby. It meant that someone was awake, someone was watching over you, and the community was fiercely protecting its own. Today, we rely on silent electronic smoke detectors hidden on our ceilings. They are efficient and necessary, but they do not possess the warm, human reassurance of a neighbor's voice and the rhythmic clicking of wood echoing through the cold winter night. Finally, let us reflect on a tradition that once consumed our Decembers and brought immense joy to our Januaries. The writing of the Nengajo, the New Year's greeting cards. In the 1970s, this was not a quick text message or an automated email. It was a laborious, deeply personal ritual of ink and paper. Do you remember sitting at the low table, grinding the black sumi ink block against the wet stone, the earthy, distinct smell of the ink filling the room? We would spend hours, sometimes days, writing addresses and greetings by hand using a delicate calligraphy brush. We carefully drew the animal of the upcoming zodiac year, expressing our gratitude to teachers, relatives, and friends. The effort it took to write each card was a measure of the respect we held for the receiver. And then came the magic of New Year's morning. We would run to the mailbox, our breath pluming in the freezing air, to retrieve a thick stack of cards bound by a rubber band. Sitting by the heater, we read each handwritten note, examining the unique handwriting of the people we loved. It was a physical manifestation of our social bonds, a pile of paper that proved we were connected, remembered, and cherished. Today, it is too easy to send a digital image to 100 people with a single click. We save time, but we completely lost the smell of the ink, the texture of the postcard, and the heartfelt, imperfect beauty of a loved one's handwriting. As we look back at the wooden milk boxes, the heavy black telephones, and the beautiful handwriting on those old New Year's cards, a deeper truth emerges. We do not just miss these old, outdated objects. We miss who we were when we used them. We are mourning the loss of our youth, the slower rhythm of our days, and that intense, beautiful connection we shared with our families and our neighbors. The world has changed, and it will keep changing, but no one can ever take away the warmth of these memories that live inside us. If this journey back in time brought a smile to your face, or perhaps a gentle tear to your eye, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It helps us keep these precious memories alive for future generations. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 20 forgotten details do you miss the absolute most? Or is there a different sound, smell, or everyday ritual from your childhood in Japan that I did not mention? Please write your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I cannot wait to share in your memories.